On the evening of November 13th, 1974, a 28-year-old woman named Karen Silkwood left a diner in Crescent, Oklahoma and got into a white Honda to drive 40 miles south to Oklahoma City. She was going to meet a journalist from the New York Times. She had a manila folder on the passenger seat stuffed with documents she had spent months secretly collecting. Inside that folder, according to the two witnesses who saw her leave the diner that evening, was evidence she believed could prove that the company she worked for had been falsifying safety inspection records for a nuclear fuel plant. Records that, if the falsification were real, meant defective fuel rods were being shipped to reactors across the country. She never arrived. Her car was found at the bottom of a concrete culvert on Highway 74, engine still running. Karen Silkwood was dead. The folder was gone. The official ruling was that she had fallen asleep at the wheel, possibly because of prescription sedatives in her system. An accident investigator hired by her union found something the official investigation had not mentioned: dents on the rear bumper of her car, consistent with another vehicle striking her from behind and pushing her off the road. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol say the dents were from a previous incident. The investigator said they were fresh. 50 years later, the question of what happened on that highway has never been answered to anyone's satisfaction. What has been established, though, through court records, congressional testimony, and a $1.38 million settlement paid by the company she worked for without any admission of wrongdoing, is that in the weeks before her death, someone had contaminated Karen Silkwood with plutonium. The plutonium had not come from any area of the plant where she worked, and the company she was about to expose had been watching her every move. Karen Silkwood went to work at the Kerr-McGee Chimeron fuel fabrication plant in August 1972. She was a metallography lab technician, making plutonium pellets that would be assembled into fuel rods for a new generation of nuclear reactor. She was good at the job. She was also, from fairly on, concerned about what she saw happening around her. You see, Kerr-McGee was one of the biggest American companies in America. The Chimeron plant operated under pressure to meet production targets that, in Silkwood's view, and the view of several colleagues, were pushing safety procedures into territory that could get people killed. Workers were being contaminated with radioactive material at rates she thought were too high. Protective equipment malfunctioned. Record keeping on radiation exposure was sloppy. Some of the contamination incidents were not being properly reported to the Atomic Energy Commission, which was the federal body responsible for regulating nuclear facilities at the time. In August 1974, Silkwood was elected to the bargaining committee of her local union, the first woman to hold that position at Kerr-McGee. Her job on that committee was specifically to investigate health and safety, so she began gathering information. She attended a meeting in Washington where she spoke to the union's national officials about what she had found. She started talking to the Atomic Energy Commission directly, testifying about specific safety concerns at the plant. Kerr-McGee began watching her. On November 5th, 1974, 8 days before her death, Silkwood performed a routine self-check with the plant's hand and foot radiation monitor at the end of her shift. The monitor alarmed. Her hands were contaminated with plutonium. The readings were almost 400 times the legal limit for personal contamination. Plant doctors began monitoring her. Over the following days, the situation became more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. Silkwood's urine, fecal samples, they all showed she had significant internal contamination. She had inhaled or ingested plutonium in quantities that plant officially could not immediately explain. So her apartment was tested, and that was found to be contaminated too. Her bathroom, her kitchen, and inside her refrigerator on a piece of bologna. The inside of the refrigerator. Plutonium doesn't drift through the air and settle inside of a closed refrigerator. It only gets there because someone put it there. The company sent her to Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico for advanced screening 2 days before she died. The tests confirmed plutonium in her lungs. The quantities were within what were described at the time as permissible levels, though she the definition of permissible was itself a contested area. What Silkwood knew by that time, when she got back to Oklahoma, was that she was carrying radioactive material inside her body, that it had come from somewhere she could not account for, and that the particular batch of plutonium found in her apartment matched a production lot at the Kerr-McGee plant to which she was not authorized to access. She wrote in a note that was found after her death, "I have no knowledge of what happened, but I feel the contamination is coming out from my body." She was convinced someone was following her. A friend recalled her saying in the days before she died that she was frightened, that she felt watched, that she was determined anyway. She kept gathering documents. She kept her appointments with the New York Times reporter David Burnham, the journalist who had broken the story of Frank Serpico and the police corruption in New York, and was now assigned to investigate nuclear industry safety. She left the diner at around 7:30 in the evening. Burnham waited in Oklahoma City. She did not arrive. By midnight, he knew something had gone wrong. The missing documents are the details that sit underneath everything else in this story, and that never quite goes away. Two people, Steve Vodka, a union official who had been one of Silkwood's key handlers in Washington, and Drew Stevens, her boyfriend, both confirmed they had seen her with a manila folder full of documents when she left the diner. Vodka had given her instructions on what to collect and how to keep records. He believed she had gathered photographic evidence of falsified quality control documents alongside written accounts of specific safety violations. The folder was not in her car when it was found. The documents were never recovered. Kerr-McGee maintained throughout every subsequent investigation and legal proceeding that Silkwood had fabricated or exaggerated the safety problems that she claimed to have found. The company's position was that she had contaminated herself deliberately to embarrass the corporation, that she had taken plutonium from the plant, presumably at the risk of her own health, as a publicity stunt. What made that argument difficult to sustain was the origin of the contamination in her apartment. A subsequent independent laboratory analysis cited in court filings, and it concluded that the plutonium found in Silkwood's home came from pellet lot 29, a specific production batch kept in a vault at the Kerr-McGee plant that Silkwood did not have access to. She did not work in that area that produced lot 39. She did not have even access to the vault where it was stored, so she could not, by any obvious mechanism, have got to it or removed it. The Atomic Energy Commission's own investigations found 11 significant violations of health and safety regulations at the Kerr-McGee plant in the months before her death. Kerr-McGee's customer, Westinghouse, had complained about the quality of the plant's fuel rods and refused to renew their contract. The plant closed in 1975, 1 year after Silkwood died. It closed because its product was considered unreliable, exactly what she had been alleging. Her father, Bill Silkwood, sued Kerr-McGee for the plutonium contamination his daughter had suffered. The jury awarded the family $505,000 in actual damages and $10 million in punitive damages. The United States Supreme Court upheld the verdict in 1984. Kerr-McGee appealed the punitive damages. Rather than face another trial, the company settled with the family for $1.38 million. The company never admitted wrongdoing on any count. Nobody was ever charged with anything related to Silkwood's death. Nobody was ever charged with contaminating her apartment or taking her documents. In 2024, 50 years after her death, two Oklahoma journalists who had covered the original story produced a documentary drawing on investigative recordings and interviews that had never been made public. New physical evidence was examined. People who had been silent for decades spoke. The central question on what happened on Highway 74 that night remained, as it has always been, unanswered. Dave Burnham waited several hours at the restaurant in Oklahoma City on November 13th, 74. He eventually gave up and went back to his hotel. He found out the next morning that she was dead. He said later that he had never stopped thinking about what was in that folder. Nobody knows where that folder went. Nobody has ever explained how Lot 29 plutonium ended up inside Karen Silkwood's refrigerator. Nobody was ever held accountable for any of it.